Karoline Leavitt was in the middle of a live television interview when the moment that would ignite a nationwide firestorm occurred. As a young conservative political figure, she was no stranger to tough questions and heated debates. But this time, the criticism wasn't about her policies, opinions, or political record. It was about her faith. The interview had been progressing as expected, with the host pressing Leavitt on her views regarding recent political developments. However, at one point the conversation took an unexpected turn. With a smirk, the Liberal host shifted focus away from policy and instead made a pointed remark about the cross necklace dangling around Leavitt's neck. "I see you're wearing that cross rather prominently," the host said, their tone dripping with condescension. "Is that really appropriate for someone trying to engage in serious political discourse? Do you think that kind of display is necessary?" For a brief moment, there was silence. Viewers could sense the tension in the air, as the host's question was not merely an observation, but a clear attempt to challenge and even mock Leavitt's open display of faith. It wasn't just about the necklace. It was an attack on the values it represented. Social media lit up almost immediately. As the clip of the exchange began circulating, reactions poured in from both sides of the political spectrum. Many conservative and religious viewers were outraged, accusing the host of blatant religious intolerance. "Why is it acceptable to wear symbols of other beliefs, but a Christian cross is mocked?" one user wrote on X, formerly Twitter. Others pointed out the hypocrisy of championing diversity and inclusion while simultaneously belittling someone for their faith. On the other hand, some liberal commentators and media figures defended the host's remarks, arguing that religion should remain separate from politics. A few even doubled down, suggesting that public figures should tone down their religious symbolism in professional settings. But for millions of Americans, this wasn't just about politics. It was about the fundamental right to express one's faith freely. The network hosting the show found itself in an uncomfortable position as the controversy grew. Executives scrambled behind the scenes, unsure whether to stand by their host or distance themselves from the remarks. Meanwhile, calls for an apology began growing louder. Prominent Christian leaders, conservative politicians, and even some moderates weighed in, emphasizing the importance of religious freedom and personal expression. All the while, Karoline Leavitt remained silent for the moment. She didn't react with immediate outrage, nor did she fire back with a defensive response. Instead, she took her time, carefully considering her next move. But when she finally spoke, her words would not only silence her critics, but also leave an indelible mark on the nation's cultural and political landscape. As the clip of the interview continued to circulate, it quickly became apparent that this was more than just a passing controversy. It was turning into a national conversation about faith, freedom, and the growing tension between traditional values and modern political discourse. Supporters of Karoline Leavitt wasted no time voicing their outrage. Conservative commentators and religious leaders took to social media, calling the host's remarks a blatant example of anti-Christian bias. Prominent figures, including politicians and media personalities, decried the double standard, questioning why expressions of other beliefs were often celebrated while Christianity faced ridicule. Fox News anchors and right-leaning influencers highlighted the moment as yet another example of the mainstream media's hostility toward faith. For many, the controversy struck a deeper chord. Christians across the country saw the attack on Leavitt's cross necklace as symbolic of a broader cultural trend, a growing pressure to suppress religious identity in the name of secularism. Church leaders and faith-based organizations used the moment to reinforce the importance of standing firm in one's beliefs. Sermons that Sunday referenced the controversy, with pastors urging congregants not to be ashamed of their faith, no matter how much criticism they might face. Meanwhile, liberal media circles largely downplayed the incident, with some dismissing the backlash as an overreaction. A few progressive commentators even attempted to reframe the discussion, suggesting that religious symbols had no place in professional or political settings. They argued that neutrality was key to fair governance and that public officials should avoid making faith a visible part of their identity. Despite these attempts to minimize the issue, the debate only intensified. Social media platforms became battlegrounds for ideological clashes, with trending hashtags like Faith Under Fire and Stand With Karoline dominating discussions. Religious freedom advocacy groups began organizing petitions demanding an apology from the network, while others called for the host's resignation. Some even compared the situation to previous controversies where expressions of non-Christian faith had been defended, pointing out what they saw as blatant hypocrisy. The television network found itself in an increasingly difficult position. Initially, they had hoped the controversy would die down on its own, but as public pressure mounted, they were forced to issue a statement. The carefully worded response attempted to diffuse the situation without taking a firm stance. It acknowledged the spirited nature of political discourse, while also reaffirming the network's commitment to diversity of thought. However, to many, the statement seemed like a weak attempt to appease both sides, without truly addressing the underlying issue. All the while, Karoline Leavitt remained at the center of the storm, yet she refused to respond hastily. While many expected her to lash out or demand an apology, she instead took a different approach, one that would soon elevate the conversation beyond a mere controversy and into something much greater. She knew that her response would define not just the moment, but also her character and her place in the ongoing battle over faith in public life. And when she finally spoke, it was with the kind of poise and conviction that few had expected. When Karoline Leavitt finally decided to break her silence, the nation was watching. Instead of responding with outrage or hostility, she delivered a measured, thoughtful statement that quickly took on a life of its own. Standing before a camera in a short video posted to social media, she addressed the controversy with calm confidence. "Faith is not a prop. It's not a political tool. It's who I am," she began. "Like millions of Americans, my faith is an essential part of my identity, guiding my values, my decisions, and the way I treat others. And no one, no television host, no critic, no social media mob will ever shame me into hiding it." Her words resonated instantly. In just hours, her video was shared by tens of thousands of people, racking up millions of views. Supporters flooded the comments, thanking her for standing strong and refusing to be intimidated. Many shared their own stories of being mocked or pressured to suppress their faith in professional and public settings. Parents encouraged their children to watch the video, calling her a role model for staying true to her beliefs in the face of hostility. But Leavitt didn't stop there. She went on to highlight what she saw as a growing problem in America, the increasing pressure on Christians to keep their faith hidden. "We live in a country founded on religious liberty," she continued. "That means we have the right to practice our faith openly, proudly, and without fear of discrimination. If a cross necklace is offensive to some, that says more about them than it does about me." Her statement struck a nerve across the political and religious spectrum. Conservative leaders praised her courage, with some calling her response a masterclass in standing firm without stooping to anger. Prominent pastors invited her to speak at events, while Christian organizations featured her message on their websites and social media pages. Even some moderate voices in the media acknowledged that the backlash against her cross necklace had been unnecessary and unfair. Meanwhile, the pressure on the television network and the host who had mocked her continued to grow. Calls for an apology became overwhelming, with some advertisers quietly reconsidering their support for the program. The network was now in a difficult position. If they ignored the controversy, they risked alienating millions of Christian viewers. If they apologized, they risked angering their more progressive audience. As the debate continued to swirl, Leavitt remained poised. She refused to play the victim, nor did she engage in name-calling or demands for retribution. Instead, she used the moment to speak about the broader importance of religious freedom and personal conviction. "This isn't about me," she said in a follow-up interview. "It's about the right of every American to live out their faith without fear or shame, and I will never apologize for wearing my cross." Her words turned a single moment of mockery into a national movement of faith and resilience, one that would not be forgotten anytime soon. The impact of Karoline Leavitt's response rippled across the country, igniting conversations in living rooms, workplaces, churches, and political circles. What had begun as a dismissive remark by a television host had now evolved into a national referendum on faith, free expression, and the cultural double standards that many believed Christians faced in modern America. As her video continued to go viral, waves of support poured in from all corners of the nation. Conservative politicians, media personalities, and faith leaders amplified her message, emphasizing the importance of religious freedom and the right to express one's beliefs without ridicule. Even those who didn't necessarily align with Leavitt's political views found themselves agreeing that her treatment had been unfair. Some liberal commentators, caught off guard by the backlash, admitted that the host's comments had crossed a line, though they hesitated to fully acknowledge the broader issue at hand. Churches across the country seized on the moment, using it as an example of why Christians needed to be bold in their faith. Pastors preached about the importance of standing firm in one's beliefs, and congregations shared testimonies of times when they too had faced pressure to downplay their Christianity. Hashtags like #StandWithCaroline and Faith Not Fear continued trending, with thousands sharing personal stories of religious discrimination in schools, workplaces, and even public service. At the same time, the controversy put the television network in an increasingly uncomfortable position. Initially, they had hoped to weather the storm without making a statement, but the calls for accountability were growing louder by the day. Their social media pages were flooded with messages demanding an apology, and emails from viewers threatened boycotts if no action was taken. Even some sponsors, wary of the growing backlash, began quietly reconsidering their advertising contracts with the network. Behind the scenes, executives debated their next move. If they defended the host's remarks, they risked alienating a significant portion of their audience. If they issued an apology, they might face criticism from their more secular and progressive viewers. It was a no-win situation, and the pressure was only mounting. Meanwhile, the host at the center of the controversy remained largely silent. Some sources speculated that they had been instructed not to comment publicly, while others suggested that the backlash had taken them by surprise. Rumors swirled that they had received internal reprimands, though the network had yet to confirm or deny such reports. Through it all, Leavitt remained unwavering. She continued to conduct interviews, not as a victim, but as a voice for millions who felt their faith was under siege. "This isn't just about me," she reiterated in one of her speeches. "It's about every person who has ever been told to keep their faith quiet. That's not what America stands for." Her words continued to resonate, transforming what could have been a fleeting controversy into a lasting conversation about faith, freedom, and resilience. One thing was clear: Karoline Leavitt had not just defended herself, she had awakened a movement. As the controversy continued to escalate, all eyes turned to the television host who had mocked Karoline Leavitt's cross necklace. For days they had remained silent, neither apologizing nor addressing the backlash. However, as pressure mounted from both the public and behind-the-scenes forces at the network, they were eventually forced to respond. In a carefully worded statement released on social media, the host attempted to downplay the incident, writing, "I respect all faiths and believe in freedom of religion, but my comments were taken out of context. My intention was never to offend, but rather to question the role of personal beliefs in political discourse." The response did little to quell the outrage. Instead of offering a direct apology, the statement seemed to sidestep responsibility, fueling further criticism. Comment sections erupted with frustration. "Taken out of context? We all saw the clip," one user wrote. Another replied, "Just say you messed up and move on. It's not that hard." Others pointed out that if the situation had involved mocking a religious symbol from another faith, the consequences would have been far more severe. The television network, realizing that the situation was not dying down, finally addressed the issue. In a brief segment during their next broadcast, another anchor read a prepared statement acknowledging the controversy. "As a network, we believe in respectful discourse and regret that a recent exchange has caused offense to some viewers. We value diversity of thought and expression, including religious beliefs." Once again, the response felt lukewarm to many. While it acknowledged the situation, it fell short of a direct apology to Leavitt or to the many Christians who felt that their faith had been unfairly targeted. Critics saw it as a calculated move, an attempt to quiet the controversy without making any real concessions. Some conservative media figures were quick to call it a non-apology, pointing out that the host had not been disciplined, nor had they personally expressed any remorse. Behind closed doors, however, the backlash was having real consequences. Reports surfaced that advertisers were uneasy about the situation, with some considering pulling their sponsorships if the controversy continued. Internal sources at the network suggested that executives were frustrated by the negative attention, with some questioning whether the host's comments had been worth the fallout. The controversy had become a public relations nightmare, and though they had hoped to move past it, it was clear that the issue was not going away. Meanwhile, Leavitt remained above the fray. She had already made her statement and had no interest in engaging in petty back-and-forths. Instead, she focused on using the moment as an opportunity to highlight the importance of religious freedom. She appeared on multiple media outlets, discussing not just her own experience, but the broader issue of faith in public life. Her composed, unwavering stance only added to her growing reputation as a principled leader. In the end, while the host may have avoided immediate consequences, their credibility had taken a significant hit. Their dismissive comment about a simple cross necklace had not only backfired but had also exposed deeper cultural tensions about faith, respect, and the limits of political correctness. The controversy had set off a national conversation, and Karoline Leavitt had emerged as its strongest voice. As the controversy began to settle, one thing had become clear. Karoline Leavitt had turned what was meant to be an attempt to diminish her into a defining moment of strength. What started as a dismissive remark about her cross necklace had ignited a nationwide discussion on faith, free expression, and the cultural double standards surrounding Christianity. In the weeks following her viral response, Leavitt continued to speak out on religious freedom, refusing to let the conversation fade into the background. She was invited to speak at churches, conservative conferences, and even secular organizations interested in discussing faith's role in public life. Her message was consistent. Religious beliefs are not something to be hidden or apologized for, and no American should feel pressured to suppress their faith in order to be accepted in the public sphere. Meanwhile, the television host who had mocked her remained under scrutiny. While the network had not taken any immediate disciplinary action, insiders reported growing tensions behind the scenes. Ratings for their program had taken a noticeable dip, and some advertisers were quietly reconsidering their partnerships. Though they had issued a vague statement in response to the backlash, they had failed to regain the trust of many viewers who now saw them as emblematic of a broader hostility toward faith. On social media, Leavitt's supporters continued to rally around her, but what surprised many was the number of people who had not previously followed her politics but found themselves inspired by her response. Some wrote that they had once felt hesitant to openly display their faith, but were now reconsidering after seeing how Leavitt had refused to back down. Parents shared stories of how they used the situation as a teaching moment for their children, encouraging them to be proud of their beliefs regardless of opposition. Eventually, the controversy faded from the mainstream news cycle, replaced by the next big political scandal or media outrage. But its impact lingered. For many, it had been a wake-up call about the cultural climate surrounding Christianity in America. For Leavitt, it was a moment that had solidified her place as more than just another political figure. She had become a symbol of resilience and conviction. Months later, as she took the stage at a packed event focused on religious freedom, she reflected on the experience. "I never expected that a simple cross necklace would start a national conversation," she said. "But if this moment has shown us anything, it's that people of faith are ready to stand up and be counted. We will not be silenced. We will not be mocked into hiding. We will live our faith boldly, just as we were meant to." The crowd erupted in applause, not just for her words, but for what they represented, a renewed determination to stand firm in their beliefs, no matter the opposition. The moment that had been meant to shame her had only made her stronger. And as Karoline Leavitt stepped off the stage, she knew this was only the beginning of something much bigger than herself.